Hello, I'm Stefania Van Dyke, Associate Director of Interpretive Engagement at the Denver Art Museum. For the exhibition Wild Things, The Art of Maurice Sendak, I interviewed some of Sendak's loved ones and collaborators. In this 5-part podcast that we're calling Sendak Stories Beyond Wild Things, we're sharing some of their memories about their beloved friend. Here's award-winning playwright and screenwriter Tony Kushner with The Dybbuk.
When he was a little boy, I think like two years old or something, he got very, very sick. He was a very sickly child, and he spent a certain amount of his childhood in bed or, being, this was in Brooklyn, when the family was in Brooklyn. And he started to really get into trouble. They weren't sure what was wrong with him, but he was getting weaker and weaker. He had a terrible cough. And his mother was terrified that he was going to die. And she moved him from the room that he was sharing with his brother Jack into her bedroom. And she was in the kitchen in this tiny little apartment. And she suddenly heard Yiddish coming from the bedroom. And she ran into her bedroom. And Maurice, who wasn't really speaking yet, like most Jewish immigrant parents, she had not taught her kids Yiddish, but Maurice couldn't even really speak English yet. And he was standing up in the bed on his tiptoes, and he was reaching up at a photograph that was hanging over the bed. He was trying to reach the photograph, and he was speaking to it in Yiddish. And she screamed. She was terrified. She didn't know what was going on. And there was a woman apparently either in the building or somewhere on the block who apparently knew things like the Jena Welt and, where about spooky stuff going on. So Mrs. Sendak went to this woman and told her what had happened, and she said, "This is bad." She said, "The reason Maurice is sick is because your father, who was a rabbi, Maurice never met him, but he said, your father's spirit has come, and he's now moved into his grandson's body. He's a Dybbuk, and that's why he's suddenly speaking in Yiddish and reaching for that photograph, because he wants Maurice to join him in the other world, in the Jena Welt." So he said, "Well, what do I do? What do I do?" And the woman said, "Well, you have to get rid of that picture, because that's how he got in. So you have to tear up the picture and burn it, and then he'll be okay." So she told Maurice that she had done this, made sure he felt good and guilty about it. But she said, "I did this for you. I my own father, the only photograph I had, and I destroyed it." But then after she died, Maurice and Natalie and Jack Maurice's sister Natalie and Jack were going through her things and putting her stuff away after their mother had died. And in a drawer, they found a handkerchief tied around some kind of weird bundle. And they opened the bundle, and it was the photograph. And she had done what the woman had told her to do. She had torn the photograph up, but she didn't burn it, which was the next thing she was supposed to do. So Maurice went to the restorers, the photography people at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and said, "Can you fix this?" And they said yes. And when Maurice first told me that story, I said, "Well, where is the photograph now?" And he said, "Where do you think it is? It's above my bed." And every night I say, "Take me, I'm ready. Take me."
That's so funny. I do remember that story now. I had just forgotten what a Dybbuk was.
The Dybbuk is the soul of a dead person who gets confused. Not exactly malevolent, but they get confused and they come back into the world and they inhabit the bodies of the living, trying to get back into the world or to reunite themselves with somebody they've lost. And they don't understand, because they're dead people, that the body is not meant to have the spirit of another person, of a dead person, especially in your body. So the person that's infested with the Dybbuk, it's called a Dybbuk infestation, immediately starts to get sick and die. The most famous Yiddish play is called The Dybbuk. It's a love story where a groom who dies because he's a Kabbalist and is practicing spells to try and win over his bride, dies and comes back at her wedding. She's being married to another man, and he comes back and...
Well, it seems like tearing up the photograph was enough.
Yes, it got him better. But he kind of loved it. It's very Maurice. He really loved it that she couldn't bring herself to go all the way, even to save her own child.
Apparently, Maurice Sendak related stories like this to his friends without a hint about whether or not they actually happened or if they were products of his incredibly active imagination. Lynn Caponera and Jonathan Weinberg of the Maurice Sendak Foundation spent more time with the author-illustrator than anyone. They met him when they were kids and soon became extended family. They told me about how Sendak would even toe this line between fantasy and reality during his daily routine.
I first met Maurice when I was 10 years old. His partner of 50 years was Eugene Glynn, a psychiatrist, was my mother's best friend.
And I, as well, grew up with Maurice. He moved into our neighborhood when I was 11, so I was just constantly over here hanging out with Maurice and Eugene and his puppies. He had a routine. He really did have to have the same thing for breakfast every day. For all the time I knew him, He would have an English muffin with Dundee orange marmalade, fresh squeezed orange juice, and green tea, and read the newspaper for about 2 hours. And reading the newspaper for Maurice was a real treat to be around, because he would often sit at the other end of the table and read the paper and just make up crazy stories about what was in the paper. And you would be sitting across from him there and you'd hear him go, "Wow, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened." And you'd be like, "What?" And he'd go, "Shh, and I got to finish the story." And you'd get to the end and then he would tell you all these outrageous things that happened. And then you'd go look in the paper and it was completely made up. He really liked to entertain. So it was a really... And you couldn't say, "Wait a minute, that didn't happen." You just would go along with it. So
Yeah, because you get really angry.
you get angry, you'd be like, "What
And
do you mean?"
sometimes it was the truth, too, so you never knew.
You never knew.
Sometimes if you didn't say, this isn't true, he would go, "What's the matter with you? How could you think that was
What are you,
true?
crazy?"
What are you crazy?" He was very mischievous.
He was
in
very
that
mischievous.
sense. He was the funniest person I knew, without a doubt, and it's very hard to express to people how funny he was. But even if he wasn't a great artist, he had this ability to light up a space and to really make the everyday kind of amazing. He knew how to take something and kind of make it special and exciting. And he was extraordinarily empathetic about, how you felt. Somebody that if you were having a lot of... like if somebody died and very close to you, Maurice was a good person to talk to. He really was very good at comforting people and understanding what it's like, to lose something.
He was very much a performer, Maurice. He was very insecure in day-to-day living, but he could turn on a dial and start to perform for you. And it was very much like a Mel Brooks sort of a vaudevillian act.
Yes, yeah. He did wonderful accents and
songs. He would make up songs,
right.
And it's really hard to relay how funny Maurice was. Because, people sort of see him as this curmudgeon, which is so far from the truth. He was just a very, very funny man. He just didn't believe in small talk. He wanted to get right to the matter of everything if he was having a conversation with you. I don't think I've ever met anybody like Maurice.
Yeah.
I mean, really, honestly.
He had a kind of outrageousness, a mischievousness.
Thank you for listening to Sendak Stories Beyond Wild Things. The exhibition Wild Things, The Art of Maurice Sendak is on view at the Denver Art Museum through February 17, 2025. For more information about this exhibition, visit www.denverartmuseum.org. Intro and outro music is from the Magic Flute Overture by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. This podcast was produced by Postmodern Company in Denver, Colorado. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And please check out the other episodes in this series.